with your kids and them, feeling victimized and whatnot, by the time it comes to that point, the damage that's done isn't something they're going to get over in a month.
Right.
Typically, it's something that's going to affect how they see themselves psychologically. It's going to affect how they view the world around them. It's going to deal with how they trust others, how they interact with other people, and it's going to affect them sometimes for decades.
Right.
And so, as parents, we want our kids to know that when we try to protect them, it's for their good. But then going back to looking at the different kinds of apps, I'm not saying, I don't think you're saying, don't let your kids do certain apps.
Right.
Choose the apps with your kids. Let the kids have freedom in what they want to have access to. But as a parent, know what those things are.
Exactly.
Be educated about the apps your kids want. If your kid comes to you and says, I want app X, Y, and Z, you say, hold on, let me go check it out. As a parent, you do some searching on it, you figure it out, and then you say, okay, I know what the pitfalls are here, and I know what works. Let me get this for my kid if we think it's appropriate. And then we show them how to use it, or we work with them so that they can make right choices. With our kids, some games allow you to communicate with outside people.
Right.
So our older girls are told, either you don't get that game, or if you do get it, you're only allowed to communicate with people that we have approved you communicate with.
Right.
That are people that we know who have the same app.
Right. Because of the complexity of the technology, I encourage parents to have three basic parameters that they constantly monitor for their kids.
Mm-hmm.
And each kid's going to be different at what level of those three that you do. You have to be able to monitor, you have to be able to limit, and you have to be able to control. My 3-year-old is 100% energetic boy. Mm-hmm. And that's before you do insert the red dye 40 or whatever that, or any sugar or any caffeine. He's 100% boy. Rules are nothing but things that he gets to destroy and try to circle. It's just at 3 years old, he's just that boy. Mm-hmm. I'm going to have to do more controlling and shutting off for somebody like him, as my middle child is very peaceful, very meek, very compliant. So there's going to be a lot more monitoring as opposed to limits and controls. Mm-hmm. So I encourage my parents that every child you have is going to have some level of those three. Mm-hmm. Now you can utilize hundreds of different tools to do that. The easiest is to have third-party apps that will help you do that. They will help you monitor from the get-go. If you don't know what's going on and you don't know how to figure that out, you're done. I mean, you have already lost that game. But being able to monitor and not just look through it, but have things that can catch the deleted stuff, have things that can catch these conversations on social media that you might not have access to. There's just so many possibilities that you as a parent have these days to help you do this. It's not like you have to spend hours looking through all text messages and stuff. That's part of what I do is I consult with families when they have a question like, hey, my kid is telling me about this and I don't really know about it. Mm-hmm. We research it. I don't do the research for you unless I need to. If I've never heard of it, or I'm going to do some research and we're going to do it together, but I want to give the parents the opportunities to say, okay, how do I find out about this? Yeah. It's easy. Dad, can I have this app? I've never heard of that. Let me look into it. Go to Google. Worst thing possible that can happen with this app.
Yeah.
And Google's going to tell you.
Very quickly.
There's the monitoring apps that will alert you when your child is having conversations that are alluding to depression and suicidal ideations. Mm-hmm. That's something that as a parent I want to know about, because I'm not going to be too naive to say, not my kid.
Yeah.
Well, you don't know. Well, I'm the parent. No, you don't know. Mm-hmm. But when you're using an outside resource that doesn't have a dog in this fight of the parent-kid game, they can pick up on things. As a parent, I would like to know about that.
And it's easy to mask depression.
Yes, it is.
Of the people I know who have lost someone to suicide and the people I know who have committed suicide, more often than not, I didn't see it coming. Right. And more often than not, the people that come to me and want to talk to me about their losses didn't see it coming either. Yeah. It's because you always think to yourself, oh, they're okay, they're good, and people tend to put on a face, especially with parents or other loved ones, that things are great, and in reality, things are not great, and you'll never know about that if you don't have that open candor. And in most relationships, that candor for that heavy of stuff is just not there.
Right. Now, you take the reality of the fact that we can talk about the people we go to work with, the people that we see and interact with physically, and we can even then hide. What do we always say to somebody we walk with? How are you? The automatic response is, man, I'm doing fine. And body language research shows that the face is the most deceptive part of the body. I can put on a smile when I'm in the worst excruciating pain, and physically and in the deepest dive of depression I've the world's ever seen. I can still put on a smile. When you get on these devices, it's masked even more, because you literally can be anybody you want to be, because there's no inflection, there's no tone, there's not. All of those things can be manipulated and constructed to be what you want it to be and to sound the way you want to sound. And the fact is, kids these days are also being introduced to things that are pure evil, that strip away that innocence. It strips away their ability to cope with reason. It's just tearing away the fabric of who they are.
Sure.
Even
things
being
are
raised
desensitizing. They so that you don't have the appropriate emotional responses to things you should have certain responses to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even on one of the problems I have with the app stores that are out there, they put these ratings on these different individual apps. Hey, there's it's kind of like TV shows now, and even movies when we were growing up, rated R. Oh no, rated R movies, But even with the apps, you go try to get into an R-rated movie at a theater, and you're 12 years old, they're not going to let you in because you have to show ID. Online, there's no way to verify age. Well, they say, well, we'll use a credit card. Well, guess what? Kids are going swiping their kids' credit cards, or they're going to the store, CVS, and buying a $5 Visa gift card, punching that number in. And there's no way to actually verify ages on these apps. So you take an app like Snapchat that's rated for 13 or 14, basically early teen, but yet there's channels and things on there that are definitely not even legal to show a child here in the state of Texas anyway, until they're 17 or 18 years old.
Yeah, sure.
So,
and the rating system, it's a guide. It's helpful,
right?
But it's not the end all. And parents should know their kids well enough to go, okay, I think my kid will do okay with this, or I don't think they will.
Right.
With movies, PG-13. All my kids are under 13 at this point.
Right.
We don't typically watch PG-13 films, but there's been a few times where I said, you know what, I think that I'm going to watch this with my older kids because I think they can handle it. It's actually pretty clean, and we'll go through it. And if there's something I need to fast forward, I will. But it's a guide, and as a parent, I should know my kids well enough. They're in PG-13 films. You may have a 15-year-old who shouldn't see a certain film.
Right.
And so as a parent, knowing your kids is really foundational to knowing what kind of apps and what kind of social media they should have access to.
Right.
And also knowing how they're affected.
Right. And proper planning is, and this is not just with technology, across anything with parenting, proper planning is going to help you when you're in those situations when you're like, I probably should fast forward this, but something's already been said or done. I remember watching the movie Big when it first came out. I look back and go, why was I allowed to watch Big? But my stepdad, he instilled in me something. I didn't realize even then he was teaching me how to parent. I remember him pausing the movie and saying, I know that he just said something and that I'm not going to repeat, but I just want to let you know that it's not okay. Things that are on television are not. And it wasn't about the word, it was about the simple fact he said there was things that they will say and do that we just don't say and do those things.
Right.
And I've taken that principle further than just not saying the word that I heard on the screen. Parents need to have a plan of what to do in those situations. What do you do when your child is in the car with you, you guys are at a red light, and there's a fatality wreck right in front of you, and your kid sees that? What is your plan to deal with any trauma? Anything that is suggestive, anything that could, I really didn't want to explain that.
No, it's good. A lot of the issues in our culture that are pervasive today deal with keeping kids safe with technology. But everything in life can be dangerous.
Right.
School can be dangerous outside of technology.
Right.
Being in the car can be dangerous. Being at church can be dangerous.
Right.
Being on a sports team can be dangerous. What do you do when your kids are playing Little League baseball and somebody has an accident on the field and breaks their ankle? How do you deal with that with your children?
Mm-hmm.
So
being able to, and you mentioned it a little earlier about building relationships with your children, and them being able to know that you're going to talk to them about things,
mm-hmm.
and if they have a question, they might or might not come to you.
Mm-hmm.
The Holy Spirit is going to be working in me, but I trust that the Holy Spirit's also working in my kid,
mm-hmm.
and it's amazing when we can say, okay, God, I need you to help me through this.
Yeah.
Because I don't have a clue. And it's hard for me, alpha male, have to know all the answers. I'm the big cop going to solve all the crime. And I'm struggling with explaining to my kid why he can't say the S word.
Mm-hmm.
So
and it's important to talk to your kids. One of the things that our kids have dealt with my wife and I, we want them to feel like they can always come to us for questions. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're just embarrassed to ask the question.
Right.
But with foul language, just as an
mm-hmm.
example, I want my kids to hear all the words with me before they hear them from somebody else outside the home, and then come back and go, hey, I heard this at school. What's this mean?
Right.
I want them to know. And so, we sat down with some of our kids and said, look, here are some words that are not appropriate that you're going to hear. And we just choose not to say those because they don't really build other people up. They're not really appropriate, especially not for kids your age. And God wants us to speak in a way that always builds others up.
Right.
He says, don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth.
Right.
That's just not really talking about curse words. That's talking about being mean and using your words to hurt other people's feelings. We just don't do that kind of stuff.
Right.
When it comes to talking about sex with your kids, a lot of parents go, oh, I really want to do that. Well, would you rather them learn it from another fifth grader, or would you rather them learn it from you?
Right.
And if you make the habit to talk through the issues with your kids, then they're going to respect you that much more for it.
Right.
And they already know that you know a lot, but they're going to know even more, hey, I can really go to my parents. They actually have a clue about what's happening in the world.
Right. And the unfortunate thing is Scott, some of the youngest kids, boys and girls, I'm talking 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, are taking photos and videos of themselves nude, doing
mm-hmm.
things of extreme sexual nature,
mm-hmm.
and sending it to other boys their age, or all the way up to grown men,
mm-hmm.
and unfortunately even grown women.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things where a kid that young might not actually understand that that's not something that you do, and
mm-hmm.
unless you tell them that that's not something that you do.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of things that I got in trouble for growing up, and I said, well, I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you do now, so you better not do it again. Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry.
Exactly.
But having open conversations with things, not waiting until something happens necessarily, but being able to gauge when you feel like it's appropriate to talk to your kid about this. Hey, I just want to let you know, hey, this is probably something you need to know that's out there, and whatever way you see fit. I can't tell you that. I can't write your treaties for your family,
mm-hmm.
and I can't tell you how to navigate those issues, but I can tell you that if your kid knows, it's more likely that they will go, oh, I remember my dad told me about that, and I probably don't need to do that. They might go ahead and do it anyways, but the simple fact is, we want to slow that process down, because what we're up against is peer pressure. We're up against mob mentality, and a lot of things psychologically that they do not have control over. You catch yourself doing things with your friends and in the midst of a crowd that you would never consciously do. You would never make the volitional decision to do this by yourself, but for some reason when that takes over, your child is like, I had no idea. Why did you do that? I don't know. You know better. I know.
Everybody else is doing it.
I know.
I went along, yeah.
So it's a little deeper than just like, well, you should have known better. Well, yes, maybe not. I don't know. But having those open conversations makes it very clear, because they're not under that stigma, that pressure, that mob mentality. They're not under. And when you get nervous, when you get overwhelmed, and when you see this taking place, your body's limbic system then kicks into training. What you've done prior to, anything prior to connected to this, and if you've had conversations about it, you've discussed it at length, that's what they're going to fall back on and resort to when they can't make those decisions. And so it's very important that you have that open, honest discussion with your kids. Technology, firearms, pocket knives, cooking, anything dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't matter what it is. You've got to have all of those things in place because your kids don't have a chance.
Yeah, and if you haven't had the conversation,
Right.
they're still going to come across the situation. So it's better to have the conversation, even if it makes you a little uncomfortable, and then have your kid better prepared for the situation than to have your kid in the situation without having had a conversation with you in the first place.
Right.
So,
am I going to go take my kid to the Pornhub website to teach them about? No, absolutely
not a good idea.
But I am going to have a little bit of explanation in place because we know how dangerous that can be for relationships and whatever else we fill in those gaps with. So
sure.
But
Well, what are if you had to sort of sum up maybe the top 3 or 4 things you would want parents to know about not just maybe how to keep your kids safe, but what are the main things you can do to build that relationship with your kids in order to help prevent them getting into a compromising situation or a hurtful situation? What would those be?
The first one, ultimately, and it's one that it's an area that my wife and I tried to work. We work really hard at doing it, but being human, we fail at it miserably, and that is simply to be an example of God in our home. We have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and it's hard for them to understand who Jesus is, other than the Sunday school lesson they got with the little cutout that they colored, and it's Jesus. He's wearing sandals and all that good stuff. But to truly understand who God is, who Christ is to be an example of the little dailies of how I talk to my wife, how I treat my wife, how I treat my boys in anger, how I carry myself at home. It's 100% ultimately the most powerful influence you can have. There's a dude named Ronald Akers. He's developed this theory called social learning theory. Amazing concepts about the home. He's specific to criminal and delinquent behavior versus conforming to rules, basically social conformity, following the rules, doing what's right, being compliant. The home is the most powerful influence. It doesn't matter if it's positive, negative, parents in the home, parents out of the home. That home, from the time a child's born and through his adolescence, that example is going to be the most powerful influence. It's been tested and tried and true since the 60s, since he started developing this. The second thing is you've got to create mechanisms of success with your kids. You've got to give them stepping stones to succeed. You got to give them room to fail.
Sure.
But that's part of the steps to succeed. You have to educate them, and that's where we spend a lot of time talking about conversation. You've got to inform them, educate them, and not just, hey, we're going to read the Bible, so the Bible says this, but applying these things to life, even at a 6-year-old, 4-year-old, 3-year-old mind. Setting these things in place and attaching them to this is what we do because, well, number one, God requires it. Number two, we like to do what God wants us to do, and basically giving them the tools to do those things. Obedience. Hey, let's not do this. How can we do this better? And whatever the case may be, we try to walk them through these successes. Okay, it just messed up. Hey, let's do it right now. And really, lastly, you have to stay engaged, not just involved, not just, hey, I'm here, but just fully engaged in your child's life.
Yeah, and it's important. And it's important for their well-being. It's important to their view of themselves.
Right.
But as a parent, we should really be interested in our kids. So you don't just stay involved so you can keep an eye on them. Right. You stay involved because you care about them, because you love them, because you want to know them. And if you know them, the better you know them, the better you can be prepared to help them, the better you can be prepared to go, something's just not quite right today. So.
Exactly. Just my 6-year-old, my 3-year-old, 4-year-old, they don't necessarily do the things that I would consider fun.
Sure.
I'll be on my, that's a good idea. I can see it. But I think it doesn't matter necessarily the activity, but the fact is I enjoy being with my kids. And it's not going to be about what they're doing as much as they're doing it with you. I can think of 3 or 4 incidents where I remember my childhood with my dad, things that we actually did, the actual event. What I can remember hundreds of incidents is the fact that we were just together.
Mm-hmm.
We were doing something, and I don't remember what it was, but we were doing something. And just being able to not put rules and constraints on, well, I have to do this, I have to flip this switch. No. If you're there, you're engaged, you're going to see the things coming up, especially in technology. You're going to see those things when they see them. Mm-hmm. You're going to see them and recognize the danger a whole lot faster, though. And so I just find it so important to just constantly, every day, stay engaged with your kids and make sure that they know that you are there in presence, because it's also, not to rely on this, but it's also good to know that your kid sees you there and they're like, well, if there's that thought of like, I want to do this, and then I'm not supposed to, but they know dad's watching, they know mom's there, it's going to be that one more reminder, like,
That's right.
we can't do this.
One more thing in place.
One more thing, one more layer.
You know, I don't want to deal with the consequence of this.
Right.
Exactly.
And you know what? If that keeps you from doing it, you know that's a win for us. Doesn't have to be for the right motives right now, but it's a win.
Indeed.
Yep.
All right. Well, Tim, thank you so
You're
much.
very welcome.
This has been very enlightening to me.
Definitely.
I'm sure it's been very helpful to a lot of people that will be watching this. So, again, this is Tim McDonald with Aspis Consulting. So, thanks so much for being here.
No worries. Okay, there's my website is aspisconsulting.org, ASPISCONSULTING.org.
And we'll definitely put a link to it in the description underneath the video.
The website is right now we're in the starting phases of getting the content up there. It's basically resources available for parents, teachers, and really any other adult that wants to help make children safer. Our whole mission is simply to make children safer. Our focus, however, is on the technology. We provide free training if you're interested in the training. The information to get in touch with us is there on the website. Let us know. We don't charge for the trainings. We simply want to make sure that if you need something, we can provide it. We're going to get it to you. But thanks for...
Don't be afraid to ask for the help.
Right.
The more help you can get, the better you can watch over and keep your kids safe.
Exactly.
All right.
Thanks, Scott.
We'll see you next time.
All right.